Welcome, welcome, welcome. Sure. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the live Q&A for the documentary film Aces and Knaves. We have an exciting conversation planned for you. I'm Lex. My pronouns are they, them. I'm going to be your tech person today, so I'll mostly be invisible and in the back techie. So now I'd like to introduce Samantha Punch. She is professor of sociology at the University of Stirling, Scotland. She has spent the last few years developing the sociology of bridge and is founder of the project Bridge, a MindSport for All, or BAMSA. She also plays bridge for Scotland since 2008, and she is author of Bridge at the Top, Behind the Screens, a book of interviews with top players, including Zia. And I'll put the link to Samantha's book in the chat. Take it away, Samantha.
Thanks, Lex. We're really delighted to welcome you all from so many different countries and time zones today. It's a real fabulous coming together of the global bridge community, and BAMSA is working in partnership with Aces and Knaves for this week's film screening. And the reason we did that is because so many of the themes and topics that appear in the film overlap with areas of research that we're really interested in as Bridge and MindSport for All researchers. So I think today we may only scratch the surface of some of those issues. But what we're hoping for is that this is going to be a fabulous warm-up for our conference at the end of June. We have a 4-day international conference at the end of June. We will put a link to the web pages for that into the chat. There's already pre-recordings for each of the 8 sessions at that conference. We have at least half a dozen pre-recordings that are already on the website that we really encourage you to watch before you come to that conference. You'll also meet the BAMSA team. Today we have Dr. Miriam Snellgrove, who's a research fellow. We have Christina Ballinger, who's the MindSport officer, and Jordan McLean, who's our research assistant. So you'll be meeting them briefly today and then again at the end of June. But the real stars of today's session are both Zia and Jackie, and I have great pleasure in introducing Zia. He does, of course, need no introduction other than for the fact some people here today are here because they're interested in researching bridge, so they may not know him as well as others. So Zia shot to fame in 1981 when he led the Pakistani national team to the final of the Bermuda Bowl. And for those of you who don't know, the Bermuda Bowl is like our Bridge World Cup. So they were the underdogs, and it was quite an incredible story, which he tells in his book, Bridge My Way, which if you haven't read it, you really should get it because it's a great read. Since then, he's gone on to win most things that are going with over 20 North American titles, and he now represents the US in international bridge and won the Bermuda Bowl in 2009 with the nickel team. And Zia is a great promoter of bridge. He's been a huge supporter both for BAMSA and for Aces and Knaves over the past few years, and both Jackie and I are extremely grateful and delighted that he's with us today. And Jackie Paré is the director and producer of the film, and she's spent over a dozen years as a reporter and writer at Fortune magazine. She's developed there her skills of being a visual storyteller, and we're so glad that she did, because when she took up bridge, she brought those visual skills to the bridge table, and now they've translated into this wonderful documentary that many of you will have already seen, and hopefully others will see it later this week. She's also done another documentary with a similar kind of group of people who are very passionate and obsessive about their hobby, or for some of them, perhaps their job, and that's a group of tap dancers. So Tap or Die was a really successful film on the festival circuit, and it's been distributed worldwide by Alexander Street Press. So Jackie, thanks for creating such a great film, and every time I watch it, I see different things in it. So it's really great to have you with us today.
Thank you so much, Samantha. This is wonderful. And thank you, Zia. And thank you, everybody, for coming today. This is great.
So were you going to kick off with the questions, Jackie?
Yes. Zia, well, you know, I just want to say a little bit of introduction. People always wonder why I made this film and what really got me started. And I got started because I'm a bridge player, not a great bridge player, but a passionate bridge player. And just sitting at the bridge table, really saw, so much comes out at the bridge table. It's very hard to hide unless you're behind a screen, your emotions, your feelings, everything. And Zia, you said something wonderful in the film about really, getting to know people right away. I mean, you can pick up on people's qualities, characteristics, whether they're honest, whether they're charming, right away when you sit down with them at the bridge table. Is that right?
Well, I do believe that. There are few games, I find golf is one, bridge is one, where it's impossible to hide one's personality, one's character. You immediately see if someone's a bully, a charmer, a gentle person, sporting, unsporting, nice to their partner. I mean, I'm not nice to my partner always, but my partners always deserve it, don't worry. But basically, bridge is a game that it's impossible to put a curtain over your emotions or the way you behave, no matter how ethical you are. And that is revealed to the other players. So I find bridge the most incredible game for discovering humans as they really are. So I like it. One of the reasons I like it is that.
What are some of the other reasons you've played this game for your entire adult life? And
some people like alcohol, some people like drugs. For me, bridge is alcohol, drugs. Not as good as when I was young, you know, I guess the other fair sex. I mean, I used to like ladies as well, but now I'm too old, so now it's refined to bridge mostly. And I can admire young ladies from afar. But bridge is a game that, because it's so beautiful and so difficult and so impossible, I know that no matter how good I am, I can never solve the issues of bridge, and I can never be perfect. And I know that today I might play the best game of anybody, and tomorrow I'll be terrible and I'll embarrass myself. And I see the same with Helgamo and Megstroth and every single player. So the game is such a leveler and such a way to raise your ego and to dash your ego that it becomes irresistible for that reason. And I love it because when I play well, I feel, let the world see how great I am. But when I'm bad, I want to hide in the corner and go and play golf and eat a lot of food.
so it's the same, whatever level of bridge you're at, it's pretty much the same for all of us.
Well,
We beat ourselves up and then we feel like brilliant.
I compare it to golf because golf is so similar. Golf is a game for those who play it where you're able to play really well if you're a good player, but you'll see not many players, except for the few Tiger Woods that there are, remain at the top forever. They just interchange and go up and go down. And that's what makes bridge so great, that you can play against a top player and beat him at any time, no matter how good or bad you are. And that top player may be tomorrow yesterday's player. So the revolving of talent is forever.
Zia, what has the last year been like for you during COVID? What's been your bridge life?
Well, first of all, I mean, obviously, like everybody else, COVID is the worst thing because you're locked up in places. But truthfully, I would say for bridge players, it was the least painful of many episodes around the world, because for bridge players, there was so much bridge. You could play bridge morning, noon, and night with good players all over the world, tournaments, money games, chats, all sorts of bridge. So I was never bored. I would play bridge as much as I want. I think Samantha mentioned one of my books, Bridge My Way. Well, I'm writing Bridge My Way Part 2 because that's something I could do in COVID, and it's almost out, and it'll be much better than the first. Please, this is a big club. It'll come soon. If I ever have the thing to, I got like 2 chapters left, and one of the chapters was about the cheats. And the trouble is the cheating world changes so fast that it's hard to keep. As soon as you write a chapter, something else happens, and you have to include that. So we'll come to that probably later. So I mean, for bridge players, COVID has not been as painful a period as it has for most of the other world.
I think that's true. Do you like playing online, or you prefer to play in person?
Item. I actually am involved with BBO and Funbridge, and I'm their ambassador. So I will never say anything wrong because they're the greatest inventions for us. Because otherwise, how would we be able to play? I mean, I could play with someone in Pakistan or America or China any day I want. I can play with, in fact, I had a match the other day, which was a separate issue. Who was it? A lady called Sue Johnson made a match that I played, I think, 12 deals against 3 robots. And the same 12 deals were then played by Andrew Robson against the same 3 robots. And then we were asked to think over why we had done what we did. Our scores were converted into imps, and there was a kind of competition as to who did better. I won't tell you who did better, but it was someone a little bit further. I don't want to say anything, but it's too embarrassing. I'm too modest to say how much I won by, but but anyway, it was a really nice way. And by watching, I'm sure it's going to come out somewhere. By watching it and hearing Andrew think when he's playing a hand and I think, we're often very similar and often quite different. So it's a nice approach, which I think can be used. And I think, Jackie, you could make great movies having challenges, two top players challenging each other, playing whether against robots or other against human beings, filming it and getting the voiceovers make it something quite entertaining and instructive at the same time. So I actually thought the format was terrific.
That's great.
And see, you've been talking there about, playing obviously more digital bridge more than ever the last year. How have you actually found that, getting to grips with that? Do you find it easier or harder to concentrate online?
Well, in the beginning, I actually, not concentration. In the beginning, I found the mechanical part quite unenjoyable and not particularly easy, misclicks or not really. I would lose some of the cards. For instance, when you play bridge, often the first card led in a real life game is a very relevant card. And, we've been trained to watch it. But on the computer, sometimes it comes and goes and what happened? And you can't, So I personally would never give up face-to-face bridge for computer bridge. But having said that, when there is no face-to-face bridge, I guess this is a pretty good substitute. And it's not my first choice, but it is a reasonable option when there is no other option. Better than not playing bridge by far is to play on the computer.
And you mentioned as well that you're a bit notorious for not always being the easiest of partners. So does playing online make that process easier for your poor partner?
Well, actually, probably yes, because it's difficult to scream and shout at your partner. And what I did, I've got a very good trick. I won't tell everybody, but if you play golf, in my room, I've got a putting, like a little cup for putting. I've got 6 balls and I've got a putter. And every time I'm dummy and I can't bear to watch the dummy play, I run there and practice putting. The result is I never shout at my partner and my putting is improved enormously. So it's wonderful. So actually it's been a good thing.
Just bringing us back to the film for a moment. So Jackie, can you say a bit more about who you actually intended the target audience to be for this film?
My original intention was that it would be a film for everyone, because my interests really were very broad in the beginning. I was interested in the brains of players and how some people just seem to be naturals and, were their brains different somehow. I was interested in the human aspect and again, all the emotions that you see coming out around you. So I really saw this as a microcosm, and I hoped, and I think my editor, Mike Hall, and my co-producer is with us today, which is great. We thought about that a lot and really tried to think about a general audience. And of course, bridge players are our main audience, but yeah.
And what do you hope it might achieve in the bridge world?
I was not hired to make this film by the ACBL or anyone else. I was not. It was purely a film that I made, with the eye of a journalist, of a documentarian. I found a rich world that I thought was worth documenting. And it was not a marketing tool by any stretch. It was a tool to, make a great film. And we set out to make the best film we could.
Well, we have one of our researchers with us who's very interested in marketing, Christina. I don't know if she wants to add anything at this point.
To be unmuted. Hi there.
Hi.
I've got a question for Jackie and Sam and Zia. Marketing bridge to the widest possible audience is one of the themes of the BAMSA conference. So to all 3 panelists, in an ideal world with an unlimited budget, what would you do to draw more people into the game?
Shall I start?
Yeah, go for it.
I think that, and I think Zia, you've mentioned this in times when we've done Q&As together, we have to bring children into the next generation into the game. And I know there's efforts in the US to do that, sort of spotty efforts, but well-meaning, and I think could turn out to be great. I mean, Chinese was introduced into schools, and chess, of course, for a long time. And I think if it's done right and well, bridge can be introduced as well. You know, that was not my intention, but if my film is used for that purpose, that's great. People can use my film however they want.
And Zia?
I think this is a very complicated question, but it's a great question. I think there's two parts of this question. One is the introduction of people to the game, which is quite a difficult methodology or quite a difficult trick. And then is once they learn or introduced to the game, they themselves will often find themselves so irresistibly attracted and entrapped that they'll take it up themselves. So I think the trick is just get them there. Now, how do you get them there? I'll give you an example. I have a son who he just learned a little bit of bridge, used to play with his grandfather, and he wasn't particularly interested. I must confess, when Fun Bridge came out, he was at school, and rather than study, he started playing Fun Bridge. And the next thing you know, he loved Fun Bridge, because Fun Bridge, he could play like a video game on his telephone. He could learn as he played it, because they would tell you, you've done something right or you've done something wrong. And he learned sufficiently in that game to play. And then he actually came with me to Vegas to a national and won one of the juniors events or something. And he enjoyed it. Now he stopped playing then, but I think the way to attract children is today is from the internet, from telephone, invent games, invent fun ways to do it. You may have to change the rules of bridge. There's a game called Mini Bridge, which people learn in Holland and stuff, which has very basic, simple rules and teaches kids how to take tricks and how to count points. Once they're into the game, they will separate themselves. Some will be bored and some will be totally seduced and entrapped. And you have to try and attract them by almost like a bait, like you're fishing. And the bait is often modern methods of technology, modern methods of game playing, modern methods of maybe changing the rules, like in cricket, of finding formats of bridge which are more exciting than the regular ones. So it's very difficult.
All of that kind of helps feed into shifting the image of bridge. So is there anything either of you would like to say about how else can we actually shift that image of bridge? The bridge does have quite a negative image in terms of being a not very exciting game for people in retirement. Is there anything else that we can do apart from things you've already mentioned?
Well, I do think things like challenge matches that are about 10 years ago, I'll give you an example. I challenged, I think, 9 computers to have a match, that we had a match, 9 computers and me at a bridge club. Now, it was a bit of a gimmick, but it attracted huge amount of publicity. CNN came. There are ways to promote bridge that are not being used at the moment. And I think whether the World Bridge Federation or people like Jackie, I mean, I sent this tape to people who watched it, of the film, and they loved it because it wasn't so technical, but anybody could watch it like a movie and enjoy it. And if anybody who's seen The Queen's Gambit, it's time for a bridge gambit like The Queen's Gambit. The Queen's Gambit, the chess movie, it was so interesting. And you have to create a different sort of image and a different sort of story where bridge is involved, and that will bring the people to bridge. Don't teach them bridge. Don't teach them this is the way you play bridge. Teach them about the personalities of the bridge world, whether they're the cheats or whether the good guys have $1 million challenges with Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. I don't mind. But that will bring the people in, not the traditional way. The traditional way will not enhance the population enough.
And I mean, you have become very well known in the global bridge community. What have you done to become this sort of global icon in the bridge world? It's
the bridge community. You see, that's the relevant word. It's not the world community. It's not the sporting community, people who like sport. It's a different thing being known well in the bridge world, because the bridge people like the characters of the bridge world. And sadly to say, there are many characters in the bridge world who are rather boring. It just happened I was a little bit more interesting than most, because I would be, either shouting at my partner or shouting at the opponent or winning or losing, but having a good time and smiling all the time. And I believe the biggest mistake people do with the in the serious world of bridge is forget that the reason we play bridge is to have fun. And they've taken over so much by the thought of money and the thought of competition and the thought of success and failure that they lose sight of having fun, and the people around them don't have fun. I don't think you can shout at your partner and still love him and have fun with him. And the world of bridge needs the atmosphere to be, as you say, changed. The image is not an enjoyable one for the outsiders.
Yeah, and I think you're right though that you talked about sort of being well known outside the bridge world. I think that's also the same in terms of what we need to try and do to promote bridge. We need to get bridge on policy agendas beyond our own bridge community. So get it recognised by governments in terms of what it can do for improving mental health, which is a growing issue that's not just as a result of COVID. It was an increasing issue for people of all ages before COVID, and how can actually bridge help to decrease social isolation and loneliness. And I think that's something that your film does do, Jackie, is that it really shows those social connections across different groups. I don't know if you've got anything else to add to what's been said so far. Or maybe you could tell us what you left out of the film. Was there anything that you didn't include? Is there anything that you filmed things and then it didn't make the cut?
I mean, I really wanted to keep the film. First of all, I didn't want to get into the weeds of bridge in the same, what you said, Zia. I knew I had to explain a little bit about the game, otherwise people wouldn't know what we were talking about, but I did not want to get into the weeds of bridge. And, you know, there were several topics that really intrigued me. One being, you know, the minds of elite players, the brains of elite players. Another, of course, being about mistakes and what to do about that. And just, what I didn't end up talking about in the film was women and in bridge and sexism in bridge and women versus men in bridge. And I know that that's a topic that you've explored. I mean, I had people tell me they're thinking about why women aren't as prevalent at the top levels of bridge or on the top teams. You know, there are theories, some of them are not so, you know, nice as far as, you know, speaking as a woman, but you know, I wonder what you've found.
I mean, maybe I can say a bit while we call on Miriam. Miriam might join us to talk about gender and age and the things we're looking at in relation to that. But from my perspective, I think there's two issues. And one, that it's not about women's brains not being able to play bridge as well as men's brains. I think it's about socialization and how we're trained and the ingrained assumptions and discourses that exist around bridge. And then the second issue is about the women's game. I don't know if you want to say anything about that, Miriam, because you've been looking at that recently.
Hi, yes, hello. Thank you very much for the film and for Zia for the questions. I really enjoyed it. And yes, I guess that is something I wanted to also ask you, Jackie, is because we are doing this project around women and sexism and bridge. And a thing that came up in the research has been this issue around women's bridge and the fact that women's bridge is positioned as inferior, less skilled, less technical, and as a result is undervalued. And as a result, women who play it are seen as less competent. But at the same time, on the other hand, there's people saying we need women's bridge because it's providing spaces for women to compete. So it's this contested space, but it does these two things of enabling women to play at elite level, but also being seen as kind of problematic. So I guess a question would be to Zia and to you is, do you have any thoughts on the women's bridge game or its contribution to how women players are viewed?
Zia, I know that you play on a team headed by Vinita Gupta, and she's unusual in the bridge world. There aren't that many women sponsors, but you play for that team.
Well, I mean, the subject is separated. I would say, as to sexism, I do believe there's sexism in bridge, which is unfortunate, but I do believe there's actually sexism in all aspects of life. And that's a sad fact about the way the world has been brought up. It's changing rapidly as we get further into the 21st century, but it's something that unfortunately in the bridge world has seen a lot of, but I think is slightly changing as we go along, because there's more and more top women players who are earning the respect and clawed their way into the kind of upper tiers. I play a lot with Marianne Mikkelsen, the Dutch lady. I play a lot with Sabine Auken, and I've won open tournaments with both of them. And I can tell you, they play as well as the best of men. But it is a fact that the general standard of the top men is not, of the top ladies, is not as good as the general standard. Why it is, I can't answer. Psychiatrists...
We'll be answering that at the conference, so we will be picking up on this topic, so people are welcome to come back for us. But because it wasn't something you focused on, Jackie, I think maybe we should turn to the knaves, because we've looked a bit at the aces, and now we should talk a little bit about the knaves and how, you know, Zia, you touched on it just there. Do you want to say a bit more about the cheating scandals, both back then that were in the film and the current ones?
Well, sadly, in the film, there weren't enough of them came out because they refused to be interviewed. Not surprisingly, they were all hiding under their stone somewhere in the world. I'm a very intolerant human being, especially when it comes to this subject. Now, sadly, this subject has become miles larger since the internet bridge has taken over. My immediate reactions to cheats at bridge was originally disappointment, and then disgust, and then desire to punish them all mercilessly. Now, there are two categories of what we're talking about, and the original cheats in the film, the Fantoni Noons and the Fisher Schwartzes, etc., were all collusive cheats, which for bridge players is the worst possible thing, because they sit with a premeditated plan to defraud their opponents, their teammates, and everybody in take for their personal gain. And they, in my opinion, should be punished, not severely. They should be dismissed from the game forever. I don't believe in forgiving them. They don't deserve forgiveness. They've taken advantage, they've taken the money, they've prostituted themselves and destroyed the game. Why should they be forgiven? I don't believe they should have 3 years. They should be destroyed and never been allowed near a bridge table again. That's my view. Now, what happened, surprisingly and sadly, when the internet bridge took over, that suddenly we found that a large proportion, this is talking from the, from what the detectives have found, maybe 10 to 15% of the players online were cheating habitually. Now, this was so surprising and so amazing to someone like me, because I play bridge for my ego. I play bridge because if I don't win, because I'm better than you, there's no point me playing. But these guys were cheating, and I think, and I'm not giving them any kind of credibility or understanding, I think they didn't perceive internet cheating as the crime that collusive cheating is. Because, I mean, I know a lot of players who I would have said are the most honest players in the world, but yet when it came to computers and internet, they all started cheating, or they cheated to a certain extent. Now, I still can't forgive them. I don't want to send them to Siberia like I do the other ones, but I think they should be given huge, unless you punish these people enormously, you will not stamp this out. If someone knows that if they're caught cheating, even on the internet, they're banned for 5 years or 7 years or 8 years and stripped of any decorations that they had, they perhaps will learn. But I have no mercy for them, and I'm completely furious by all of them.
We know that it's very, very difficult, though, to prove these cases.
Well, there are, as some will know, there are not detectives, but people like Nicholas Hammond. I don't know if you know him. He's a statistician who prepares statistics of all the players. And what happens is when say Samantha and Jackie, who are decent players, are suddenly beating up all the kind of Mexroth and Rolwells and Helgemore regularly, and they declare a play, or their defense particularly, and their bidding, which are areas where you can get prior information, are suddenly beating the experts in regularly in statistical terms, then they become suspicious, and then they're further investigated. And there've been teams of people who spend hundreds and hundreds of hours. I mean, I know so many of them. I couldn't do it because it's such a sad world. And they've just gone through the files and the hands until they've discovered all these people. And it's horrific. I think it's actually horrific.
Could we bring in Jordan McLean from the BAMSA team? He's the last one of the BAMSA team with us today. He's been doing some research on that, so he may well have a question for you both. But while we're bringing him in, one thing that I observed is that the film was very much about sort of individual pairs cheating and the individual drive of the Sheriff Boyer, who sort of drove the campaign to stamp it out. But what has been good to see is in the more recent scandal, it's been recognised more as a social problem that requires a collective solution, and it's galvanised people to work in groups, and even the organisations now are starting to take it more seriously. So that's a good thing. Jordan, did you have a question for us?
Yes, thank you very much, Sam. And I just wanted to, first of all, say thank you very much to Jackie. The film is absolutely fascinating. So thank you very much for producing it. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And thanks also to Sam for co-hosting the event too, and for Zia for your time as well. It's been very interesting to hear your discussions. In particular, in relation to BAMSA, I'm intrigued by the notion of confessions and how confessions have been used as a form of disciplinary action for players who have confessed to cheating. My question revolves around this notion of confession, and particularly I draw upon the sociologist Michel Foucault, who talks about confessions in the early 4th century. That was a very familiar Christian practice for those who have committed who have kind of went away from baptism, and they have what he called as the penance, and it was their penitential right in order to confess. Either they were brought forward to confess, the penitent, or they confessed themselves to the priest. And I just wondered, in relation to bridge, my question is to Jackie and Zia, do you think confessions is an appropriate form, appropriate disciplinary mechanism in order for players to confess? Or do you think it could be something else? Because I'm thinking here of sports like cycling, for instance, where confessions have been used in the past. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts.
I know in the latest round of online cheating, there have been confessions, on bridge winners. I think that, the original 2 pairs have not confessed and still claim not to have cheated. I don't know, Zia, what do you think about
You see,
confession?
I understand confessions and I appreciate confessions, but sometimes, and this is what I perceive or feel, confessions are made for the purpose of advancing and reducing punishment, and they're not sincere at all. Now, if it's another mechanism of cheating the system, I'm not so sure it should be permitted. It's really complicated, this. And obviously confessions that are made voluntarily and without the pressure of knowing that tomorrow they're about to be caught, so they're going to give a confession, that's one thing. But confessions that are made for the purpose of avoiding severe penalties, I don't know. And how do you judge and how do you gauge and how do you adjudicate such confessions? It's a complicated thing. And I just think the only one way is that the overall punishments for cheating must be made more severe, and then you can make exceptions if a person does work for the benefit of the society, which they think, then of course you can look at them. But I'm a bit wary of confessions, is what I would say.
That's a fascinating question, though.
We've got some great questions coming in. Do we want to start opening up to them now?
Yes.
Tim Rees, I don't know, he's got a question here that links to cheating.
Yeah, I was going to ask first if everybody could actually come on and turn their videos on so that Zia and Jackie and Sam can see your faces. And then we can hop over to some folks and
I've seen about
them.
2 or 3 of my ex-wives so far. I see my Indian friends in San Francisco. Very nice to see you guys.
Tim, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, okay, thanks for the film. It was very interesting. Zia, you were saying you were disgusted by the cheats. When they've finished their bans, some sponsors might be willing to employ them again. if you get to play against them, would you refuse to play them, or would you feel you had to satisfy your own sponsors?
It's such a difficult question, because the truth is, and this is a little bit like nepotism, I would refuse to play against some of them and not others. I would be my own judge and jury as to the severity of the cheaters and how they've been punished and how they've been remorseful. And then, I mean, I would never sit on a table against Fischer and Schwartz. I would leave the table and walk away. I would never sit on the table against Fantoni Nude. I would leave the table and go away. But there's some others who have cheated, who I would sit on the table with if I thought they've been punished in a way that it's not fair, but there is no
shown remorse. Is that?
Well, it's not really remorse. I feel some people, I won't go into names because it's a very complicated issue. I've got a couple of friends of mine, and I really mean friends, they're people who I know and like for many years, and they've been found and are accused and proven to be guilty of cheating or semi-confessed. Now, some of them have been mildly cheating because they're too lazy to perhaps go through the exercising, and they want to watch the sports channel on TV, so they quickly have a look at the internet and do it. Now, I know that they've cheated and it's terribly wrong, but I can't hate that person because I know him well enough, even though he should be punished, and he will be punished. So it's a complicated thing, and I would say for a large portion of certainly the collusive cheats, I don't want to ever sit on the same table unless they serve what is regarded as the official period of ban by adjudicating authorities. But it's not an easy question. And the big cheats, the murderers of our game, should never be allowed in a room. And I think all the top players will stand up when Fantoni and Nunes come in. They won't let them play. I just don't think they'll allow them to play.
Would they allow them to play individually or just not together?
Well, certainly not together ever, but even individually. In Italy, they allow them. But I know if they came to an ACBL event in America, none of the top players would allow them to sit there. Or I would say 90% wouldn't anyway. That's why I say I think the punishment should be much larger and the game should be then much easier for us to play with. We don't have the awkwardness of having to, I want to go and play bridge and I'm sitting on a table. What do I do? Not talk to this person, not ask them what conventions they play. There's too awkward. There's so many social factors that take part in a bridge game that now they'll be lost. There'll be so many bridge questions that I want to ask, but I don't want to address the person because I can't bear to speak to them. It's a complicated area.
Lex.
Thanks.
Thanks so much, Tim.
I think we have
we have a lot of questions, so yeah.
Do we have any others following on from that, the cheating? I think we have one from Filipos Frangos, which is related to that.
Tim.
You can go ahead, Filipos.
Or if not,
Filipos, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Can you hear me?
There we go.
Yeah,
we can hear
you. We can, yes.
He was muted.
I'm sorry, my camera has a problem. I've got to take my laptop for repair, so you cannot see me.
That's okay.
I have discussed the issue with some of the people who may be present here. I think I saw John Camras attending this, president of the EBL. So is there anything, does anyone here, does Zia think, and does anybody else think that there is a way of stopping these people from ever representing their countries again? And another side point I made in a question, I've been shocked to discover on internet sites like Bridgewin, as you said, the long grudges that players, top players, pros, keep against each other. I mean, people have been bringing up things that happened 20 years ago. Does Zia think that this is a characteristic of the game, and does he think that it helps promote the correct image for the game?
I don't think it helps correct the image. I think it's really sad for the game, and the game is disintegrating in so many ways. And I mean, actually, even though I don't really I rarely go to bridge winners except to read about someone who's been cheating, because it's the only thing that unfortunately has got a morbid interest to all the people who do it. And it's sad, because that's the only time you say, oh, who's been caught today or who's been caught tomorrow. And as you say, these grudges and these 20-year-old battles which are brought out, I mean, I find that there's so much infighting that goes backwards and forwards. You see 30 people just with nothing better to do but writing against each other, and then delving into, as you say, histories of players and histories of situations. And it's no good at all for the game. No, I don't think it's helpful at all.
Lex, do you want to pick another?
We have Jose Julio's got a couple of questions, I think.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead, Jose.
Thanks. It's very nice to be here, and congratulations, Jackie. The movie is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
I'm having two questions, one for Jackie and one for Zia. Because we're still on the cheaters mode, I'll pose the first one to Zia. Would it make a difference if you found these former cheaters or not so former cheaters playing with each other, with their former partners, or if they were playing with brand new partnerships and brand new teammates? And the question for Jackie, the one thing that I think will be very interesting and I missed in the game is the gender issue that we already talked about. Gender as in the sexism, but also the ages, the difference between younger and older players. That's the one note that I would think would be good enough for you to make a sequel, and probably the Kings and Queens sequel instead of Faces and Names. So I would really like you both to comment a little bit on this one. Thank you.
The one idea that appealed to me for a sequel was a village in India I heard about, where bridge had been brought there, and people were largely illiterate, but became champion bridge players. And I don't know, this is an idea that intrigued me that, I don't know, we'll see. But yeah, I don't know. I think I've pretty much, I took a deep dive into the subject, and those, what you see in the film is what really intrigued me.
Thanks, Jose. Sam, is there another question that you see that you want to go to?
No, have you got another one there?
Tilak has his hand raised, and I saw a couple of questions before, so I'll go ahead and unmute you. There you go.
Yes, my question is to Zia, and it is not strictly on the subject of aces and knaves, but I have been playing bridge for about a year, on BBO, and I'm currently learning from the LTPB1 software from ACBL. So my question to Zia is, what tips would you give to a beginner like me to stay motivated? Because there is so much to learn in bridge. There's so much theory to learn in bridge.
All right, so I would say this is an easier question than some of them, because this is a game that seduces you. All you have to do is to find a nice group of people to play with. So I would say, don't worry about learning the theory too deeply in the beginning. Find a group of 4 or 5 people who you like, or a club where you like, and play with them as much as possible. Try and have one player in that game who's slightly better than the rest of you, and enjoy yourself. Make it a social occasion and do it as often as you can.
Sure.
When you play, go to things like fun bridge. As I say, fun bridge, you can play bridge at a very level that pleases you, but it also gives you some tuition as you do it, because it'll tell you, you make this bid, it means that. You make that bid, it means that. And then start taking a partner and challenging 2 other people. There's nothing better to motivate someone than to beat up on his friends, to play a match and beat them and say, the winner buys or gets dinner paid for by the other guy. I don't care. But the competition gives you excitement, and the competition turns you on to play more. But most people like you who started bridge have felt the addiction, and now you're irresistibly drawn to the game, and it'll be hard for you to come out. So it's just a matter of how long it takes you before you're underwater and drowning in the addiction.
Sure. I think I'm already there. Also, Zia, at this stage, any books that you would prescribe or suggest?
Well, it's very much dependent on your level, but in early stages, I would say read Victor Mollo, Bridge in the Menagerie. He's written fantastic books, which are all amusing about this group of animals who belong in a club, and each of them have different characteristics like human beings. I used to play a lot of bridge with Victor Mollo many years ago, and a fascinating guy, very small guy, decent player, but he used to base all his characters about people in the club, and he changed their names. So that's a book. There's a book called Right Through the Pack by Robert Darvis. It's a book where a man is sitting in a bridge club late at night. Everybody else has gone home and he's waiting for his bus or the train to come. And while he's shuffling the cards, suddenly the 2 of spades jumps out of the deck and says, "Hello, Mr. Darvis." And he says, "Hello, what is this?" He says, "We only talk to people who love bridge." And now each of those cards comes and tells a story where that card was involved in a hand, and they were the key part of this hand. And each card tells their story. So it's beautifully written like a fairy tale, but it's very enjoyable at the same time. So that's a book I would recommend, for instance. Any book by Terence Rees, by Kelsey, they're getting a little bit more complicated in the beginners. I learned on a book called 5 Weeks to Winning Bridge by Alfred Scheinold. It's 50 years out of date, but it was very, very readable. And then there's some brilliant books by a Pakistani guy called Zia, but we'll talk about that later.
Thank you so much, Tilak.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
The next person I'm going to go to is Tim Anderson. Go ahead, Tim.
Hi. Yeah, I have a question. I work for the English Bridge Union on promoting bridge and building up the membership in our bridge clubs. And also, personally, I've been an enthusiastic bridge player for many years. So I want the game to thrive. Now, one of the problems, it seems to me, in promoting bridge is the difficulty we have in visualizing what is interesting about it. In other words, the passion, the excitement, the fun that is in a game of bridge. Very, very hard, it seems to me, to photograph, very hard to video in a way that communicates that. Jackie obviously has been doing this, addressing this problem with the people she's worked on in the film. But I'd be very interested in ideas for us, because everything we do in promoting bridge has to be illustrated. It has to have a picture. Videos go down very well, and frankly, lots of pictures of hands of cards or people sitting around tables. They're just not very engaging, and more importantly, they don't communicate what we love about bridge, which is the passion in it, and the gambling instinct, and all the fun we have in competing at the table. Somehow the pictures don't convey that. So any ideas on this would really be most welcome. What do you think about the problems we have in this area?
Well, as a filmmaker, my editor and I, Mike Hull, that was the biggest challenge, because unless you have a hidden camera in a room, and can put it there and, see the tears flow and the people shouting and all of the expressions that go on. I mean, we captured a lot of it. We had the camera in the room at many tournaments, and we're not shy about going up directly and putting the camera in people's faces. People were very generous allowing us to do that, but that's hard. I think the editing, and I really do salute my editor for this, is critical. The pace of the film. I think the music, we tried to really bring bridge alive with the music. The music was composed by a pretty terrific musician, and he's also a tap dancer. You have to come up with these kind of tools to bring the room alive. It's like watching paint dry otherwise. And, the emotions are a lot, I think you do get expressions on people's faces, but the emotion is very much under the surface. I think people try to, hide their emotions, even though they spill out unintentionally. I don't know, Zia, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, first of all, I want to say how much I really love Jackie's movie. Everybody who I've shown it to or has seen it that I know And most of them, a lot of them were kind of very casual bridge players, loved it. And what I like about it, as we said before, it's not a technical teaching type of bridge movie. It's bringing out personalities, it's bringing out color, it's bringing out young people, old people, girls, men. So that's what I think. There are two aspects to your question, Tim. One is people who don't play bridge, and then two, people who play bridge, because they're a different audience and there's a different way to reach them. The people who play bridge, you can give movies where there's, for instance, competitions where you have people's voiceovers so you can hear how they think, so you can interest the person who's watching it. And again, the standard, we made some many years ago and they were quite well done. Jeremy Flint and Omar Sharif and all were involved. But for people who don't play bridge or hardly play bridge, you have to have the Jackie approach of bringing in color and excitement that works for a non-card player. And again, I talk about the Queen's Gambit, as you saw, that chess program, which didn't show technical moves in chess, but made up a story of chess players and how and you could easily do that in bridge. There are a lot of bridge players who've had fascinating lives. I mean, I could tell you a story which is not quite the thing, but there's a school in Pakistan when the earthquake came about 20 years ago, 15 years ago in Pakistan, but a lot of schools were destroyed. I appealed to all the bridge players in the world, and all the bridge players, and only the bridge players, contributed between $10, $20. One gentleman gave about $50,000, and we built a school in the middle or near Kashmir in Pakistan, the most very desolate place, where young kids now go, and there's a school called the Bridge Campus. Not one of those pupils knows what bridge is, but this is what bridge can create for the world. Now that's an aspect of bridge which is so good for the image of bridge. And there are many of these stories dotted around the world, which are not card playing stories, but stories of human beings, the Bill Gates, the Jackie movies. Okay, the cheaters, that makes it interesting as well, and how cheaters are punished. Lance Armstrong, was of great interest to the public for many years. In fact, his $5 million settlement was with the company of one of my ex-partners, Bob Hammond, who had to pay him $5 million and then got more than that when they settled, when they found out that he was. So sadly or rightly, there are many other ways to attract public people, persona, that is not on the bridge table. And the bridge players you do by creating the right sort of documentaries and films that can appeal to them. But you need money.
Thank you so much, Tim.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think we have time for one more person. So I'm going to go to Xiang, who has his hand up. Go ahead, Xiang.
Hey, Zia. Can everyone hear me? Okay, it's working. Zia and I met at a few tournaments, I think. I'm not sure if you remember handing me the pin that said "Say No to Cheaters" at the Philly National.
Oh, the Philly tournament, yeah.
Yeah.
In my film.
So speaking of cheating, so I have so much to talk about, but I want to pick a few topics. First, I want to talk about the future of the game and young people. So I think one of the problems, if you look at Zia, I'm not sure if you're familiar with any of the top video games or anyone here like StarCraft 2 and like.
His son is in the room and he's very familiar with them.
Okay, like if you watch the tournament, it's like watching sports. It's very exciting. Like the atmosphere, people are like holding their breaths and everything. I think to some extent that's a little bit missing in bridge. I think it would be a huge shame if bridge died out like by the time I reach your age. And I think
I'm a young man.
Like bridge has a lot of potential. It applies to only a specific audience, but there's many people that would love the game of bridge if they were introduced to it. But I think there's so many people that haven't even heard of bridge. Like I learned it from my dad, and if it weren't for him, I wouldn't even know of the game. And I think a few of the problems include it's not like flashy enough. It's not like grabbing attention. One of the problem I think is actually the ACBLs and their point structure for attendance. It's not a competitive, like you want competition. You shouldn't shy away from competition and promoting like excellence and cater to like just to grabbing as much money as you can right now just to keep, you know, the people that aren't good coming back and not realizing they're not good because they're just fed points for sitting there. Like I can sit there and like average over 60 and just collect points, but that's not fun. I like to
Xiang,
make it the best. Yeah.
Sorry, Xiang, do you have a question for Zia or Sam or Jackie?
I do have a question. So for the fact that you have more that I think money is required to make the game more exciting and like an option for younger players to play, because you need to be able to play professionally if you want to take the game seriously. But at the same time, introducing money, I know, has a problem of like encouraging cheating, because now there's more incentive to cheat. How would you suggest striking a balance there? And what's your opinion?
Well, I think your comment about the video games is very, if you could make, obviously not a Warcraft or a, you know, whatever those things are called, I don't even know the names of them, but if you could make video games which are like simple versions of a sort of way to play bridge, and you could make them appealing to kids, that would be a great way to start. I think
have like achievements and stuff. Yeah. Awards.
I think that, I don't know. I mean, I'm not, competent enough to understand how it would be done. But I mean, as I said, Fun Bridge was a very nice introduction for a lot of casual players. And they could be one step further towards the child audience or the game playing audience, which could be used. And I'm not disagreeing with you about the ACBL, and they're a business who are trying to, have continuity. But as you say, they're not attracting younger people to the game at all. And there's a lot of competition. Today when I go and play poker, somebody can win $1 million tournament every day. When I play bridge, the sponsors get a cup, which is fine, but they don't mind. But the young kids don't say, well, I want to go and win a cup. They want to win $1 million at the poker table. So it's a little bit difficult, but yes, you have to make it more exciting. There's a game called cricket, which was dying a few years ago. And then they decided to change the rules of cricket so that there was something called a 20-over cricket match, which meant in a shorter period of time, you had to score as many runs as possible. So it made the action much faster. And I think in bridge, you could adjust that sort of thing and have sort of speedball bridge events where you have to play to time. Maybe you get more marks for playing quickly, or you get a limited amount of balls to play and to get results in. And the scoring could be, instead of a Grand Slam being 1,500, maybe it should be 3,500. So you bid Grand Slams on finesse, it's more exciting to watch. So someone has to revolutionize it, and they require lateral thinking to change, as you say, the old image. I love bridge, and at the highest level, I don't want to change it at all. But to attract young people, you need to find a trigger. And I don't know the trigger particularly.
I have one more comment about a different topic, which was women in the sport of bridge. So if you look at like StarCraft 2, chess, bridge, you name it, at the very top, there's definitely women at the very top. But generally in most sports, men are predominant. And I know this is not politically correct, but I think it has to deal with genetics and probability. So you guys, many of you probably know that the women have 2 X chromosomes and men have an X and a Y chromosome. So the thing is, X chromosome is really important in determining intelligence. And if you have 2 X chromosomes, you kind of take the average of the two. Whereas if you have only 1 X chromosome, you're more likely to be an outlier. So if you look at the Gaussian distribution curve, which is like the bell curve, for men, it's very flat and wide, so very wide ranging. And for women, it's a lot more closer towards the middle and peaks in the middle. So what I think is like, we need to be fair to both men and women to promote the game, and not have, especially like the sexual harassment and all that, should be 0 tolerance. But I think you need to promote fair competition. not try to force, like, because you can put guys off if you try to force women to do well.
We will be going into this in a lot more detail at the conference. We have a 2-hour session on this very topic, and it is a contentious topic, but I would like to say as a sociologist that I strongly disagree with your argument that it's to do with anything sort of biological or innate. And I suggest I put a link in the chat about a paper on bridging BAMES, which actually contradicts a lot of that, a lot of those things that you've said. So I would suggest you watch some of that and come back in June to discuss this contentious topic in more lively detail.
I think all men should be banned except me, and all women should play bridge. Men, all women and me. That's what I would think. Not sexist, but it would be a much greater game for everybody.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, everybody. I think that's probably all we have time for. Jackie, Sam, how are you feeling?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna just throw some links in the chat for everybody. I was putting them in earlier just so you could see them before folks disappeared. But thank you so much for joining us. This was a wonderful conversation. I hope everybody enjoyed it as much as I did. And in the chat, you can find the show and tell link so that you can share the film with your friends and family and your bridge partners. You can register for the conference there. And I put a link to Samantha's book as well. Thank you so much.
Zia's in it. Zia's in the book.
Thank you, guys. It was really nice talking. All watch the movie, buy the book, and don't beat me up when you play bridge. Don't double me. I'm your friend. Bye.
And if you want to unmute and say goodbye, you can go ahead.
Huge thanks everyone for coming. Huge thanks to Lex and the BAMSA team, but in particular to both Zia and Jackie. I mean, Jackie for an amazing film and Zia for starring in the film, and for both of you for doing everything that you'd do to help promote bridge. Even though that might not have been your original intention, Jackie, it is what you're achieving through this film. So we're delighted to work with you both, and thank you so much for your time today.